Hello, true crime fans. Welcome to Debate the News True Crime live on Chatter Social. I'm Joseph Lobosco, joined by my fabulous co-host Adrienne Barker. And tonight we're digging into the explosive case of Eric Rudolph, a domestic terrorist whose bombing spree at the 1996 Olympics and beyond led to one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history. Some of the discussion material, including terrorism, bombings, and extremist violence, may be disturbing or upsetting, so listener discretion is advised. If you or someone you know needs support, help may be available at the Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. Adrienne and I are not attorneys, law enforcement, or forensic experts. While we research every case thoroughly, the show is recorded live with minimal editing. Any statements containing factual inaccuracies are unintentional. Any individuals or parties named who have not been convicted of a crime are presumed innocent unless proven guilty. The opinions of our guests and audience members are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of myself, Adrienne, or Debate the News.
So tonight, we are unraveling together here on Chatter Social the saga of Eric Rudolph. Yep, remember that name? The Olympic Park bomber. And Rudolph's string of attacks in the late 1990s targeted the Atlanta Olympics, abortion clinics, and a gay nightclub, leaving deadly carnage and a community on edge. His 5 years on the run in the Appalachian wilderness and the dramatic capture in 2003, do you guys remember that? Had become the stuff of true crime legend. Hence, we're doing the show tonight. We're going to dive deep into a comprehensive timeline of Rudolph's crimes, the investigation, his extremist motives, and then, Joseph, and this is what I love live on Chatter Social, we're going to debate those questions that are lingering about how the heck did he evade capture and what even drove him to the violence in the first place. Okay, let's go to the timeline. July 27th, 1996. Do you remember where you were? Crowds of spectators were filling Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta for the Summer Games when a sudden explosion rocked the night, and a 40-pound pipe bomb hidden in a backpack detonates near the main concert stage. And the blast kills 44-year-old Alice Hawthorne and wounds over 100 other people, immediately sparking fears of terrorism on U.S. soil. And here's the thing, about 20 minutes before the explosion, a chilling 911 call was made by an anonymous male voice, and it was warning, there is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes. And a call later traced back to Rudolph. Despite the warning, by the way, the bomb detonated in a packed public concert, sending nails and shrapnel ripping through the crowd.
In the chaos of that night, Richard Jewell, a security guard who had spotted the unintended green backpack and helped clear bystanders away, was hailed as a hero for saving lives. But within 3 days, the FBI's investigation took a sharp turn. Jewell was leaked as the prime suspect, and a media frenzy descended on him. For 88 days, Jewell lived under a cloud of suspicion as the FBI and the press scrutinized his every move, despite a lack of any credible evidence linking him to the bomb. It was a case of investigative profiling gone wrong. Authorities theorized the bomber might be a quote-unquote hero bomber fitting Jewell's profile, a lone, failed law enforcement aspirant. But they were dead wrong. By October 1996, Jewell was fully cleared and formally exonerated, and attention returned to finding the real bomber. Meanwhile, the Olympic bombing, now clearly an act of domestic terrorism, remained unsolved as 1996 turned into 1997.
January 16th of 1997, just 6 months after the Olympic blast, terror strikes again. Around 9:30 a.m., a powerful bomb explodes at the Atlanta Northside Family Planning Services Clinic in the suburb of Sandy Springs. So this clinic provided abortions immediately, right? That would suggest an ideological motive. The bomb was hidden outside of the building's ground floor. It blew apart the clinic's walls, shattered windows across the street. Then, about an hour later, as firefighters, police, EMTs swarm the scene, a second device hidden in a nearby trash bin suddenly detonates. This secondary blast is deliberately aimed at first responders. Cruel tactics sometimes used by terrorists to amplify casualties. Shrapnel and debris spray the parking lot, injuring at least 6 people, including law enforcement officers, though miraculously, thank God, no one is killed. Investigators at the scene quickly note the hallmark of an anti abortion extremist targeted the clinic, chosen for its service, and a secondary bomb timed to injure those coming to help. The FBI, the ATF, they are realizing right now they may be dealing with a serial bomber.
February 21st, 1997. Only 5 weeks later, another blast jolts Atlanta. Late that evening, a bomb detonates in the rear parking lot of the Other Side Lounge, a popular gay and lesbian nightclub in the city. Bar patrons scream and flee as the explosion rips through an exterior patio. 5 people are injured by flying nails and wood splinters. Investigators then discover a second bomb, hidden in a duffel bag on the side of the club where first responders are gathering. The second device is safely defused by the bomb squad before it can inflict more harm. The pattern is undeniable now. The perpetrator is targeting what he sees as quote-unquote immoral locations, an abortion clinic, a gay bar, and using secondary bombs to try to kill or injure rescuers. Sure enough, days after the Other Side Lounge attack, several media outlets, including Reuters, NBC, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, received nearly identical letters from a militant anti-abortion group calling itself the Army of God. The handwritten letters claim responsibility for the January clinic bombing and the Other Side Lounge attack. In fiery language, the letter condemns abortion, homosexuality, and federal authorities, boasting that, quote, units of the Army of God, end quote, perpetrated these acts of terror. These letters provide the first solid link between the crimes, confirming that one serial bomber with a radical Christian extremist ideology is behind all the Atlanta area attacks.
January 29th, 1998. Shortly before 7 a.m. on a cold Thursday, a deadly explosion shatters the morning calm in Birmingham, Alabama. A bomb had blown up outside the new all-woman health care clinic. That was a downtown women's reproductive health clinic. This device is hidden in a plotted plant by the entrance and packed with nails. Robert Sanderson, an off-duty police officer working as a security guard at the clinic, he's killed instantly in the blast. And Emily Lyons, a nurse arriving to work, she's horrifically injured. Shrapnel pieces, and it pierces her body and her eyes, leaving her blinded in one eye and permanently scarred. And the Birmingham bombing, unlike the Atlanta attacks, has now taken a life. Robert Sanderson, making the first fatal bombing of an abortion clinic in U.S. history. Within hours, investigators recover critical evidence. So a witness saw a gray pickup truck speeding away from the scene moments after the blast. The truck's description and partial plate numbers lead authorities to an Army veteran and a handyman from Western North Carolina, 31-year-old Eric Robert Rudolph. And in early February 1998, federal agents named Rudolph as a prime suspect in the Birmingham attack and issue an arrest warrant for him. They soon realized that the elusive Atlanta bomber and the Birmingham bomber, guess what? They're one and the same. Investigators publicly connect Rudolph to all 4 of the bombings, and let's go over that. It's the Olympic Park, the Sandy Springs Clinic, the Other Side Lounge, and the Birmingham Clinic. And now the full-blown manhunt for Eric Rudolph begins.
As law enforcement zeroes in, Eric Rudolph vanishes. In February 1998, shortly after being identified, Rudolph flees into the rugged Appalachian wilderness he knows so well. A resident of Murphy, North Carolina, a small town in Nantahala National Forest, Rudolph is an experienced outdoorsman. Authorities descend on the area, scouring the mountains, caves, and forests for any trace of him. In March 1998, Rudolph's older brother Daniel staged a bizarre act of defiance to protest what he called the government's persecution of his brother. In doing so, Daniel cut off his own hand with a circular saw and mailed a videotape of the bloody act to media outlets. Surgeons later reattached Daniel's hand. The shocking gesture underscored how fervently some in the Rudolph's family and circle distrusted the federal government. Meanwhile, the FBI formally charges Rudolph for the 3 Atlanta area bombings. On May 5, 1998, Eric Rudolph is added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, and a $1 million reward is offered for information leading to his capture. Hundreds of agents, along with ATF, U.S. Marshals, state police, and local deputies join the manhunt. They established the Southeast Bomb Task Force, with command posts in Atlanta, Birmingham, and Andrews, North Carolina. Tracking dogs and helicopter patrols comb the hills. Yet throughout 1998, Rudolph remains a ghost in the Carolina woods.
Joseph, I'll be back. I just got it cut off my hand. I mean, what the heck? That is crazy. Okay, sorry. And I'm not cutting off my hand, guys. The manhunt stretches on for months, then years. Do you guys remember this? Investigators consider the possibility that Rudolph has assistance from sympathizers in the area, backwoods militia members, or anti abortion locals who might be hiding him, but they find little evidence of an active support network. Rudolph is such a loner, the agents believe he wouldn't trust anyone with his location. He likely relied on survival skills, secret supply cache, and sheer knowledge of the terrain to avoid capture. Indeed, there are intriguing signs of Rudolph's surviving tactics. In July of 1998, a store owner in rural North Carolina reports a strange burglary. Someone broke into his health food supply store at night, stole a 6-month stockpile of food and gear, and left $500 in cash on the counter as payment. Authorities suspected this courteous thief, murderer, if you don't mind me saying that, was Rudolph, resupplying without drawing attention. Throughout the 1990 and 2000, there are occasional reported sightings. I mean, I just want you guys picture this. This is how many years that he's in hiding and what the Atlanta people are feeling right now. A hunter glimpsing a gaunt man darting through the trees, a transient that matches Rudolph's description, seen camping near a stream. But each time, search teams arrive to find nothing. Many Americans begin to wonder if Rudolph is even still alive. And some officials privately speculated he might have died or fled entirely. But a core group of law enforcement never, ever gives up the chase. And the task force persistence is unwavering. Agents methodically map caves, old cabins, and they monitor the Rudolph family for any contact, making sure nobody's cutting off any hands. Years drag on with no arrests, turning Rudolph into a near legendary fugitive.
Yeah, Adrian, cutting your hand off is insane. Thinking that anyone would even care that this guy cut his hand off is even crazier. So, May 31st, 2003, after 5 years off the grid, the elusive fugitive is caught by pure chance. In the pre-dawn hours in the small town of Murphy, North Carolina, rookie police officer Jeffrey Postell is on a routine patrol behind a grocery store when he spots a disheveled man rummaging through a dumpster for food. It's 4 a.m., and Postell initially suspects a burglar or vagrant. He draws his gun and orders the man to surrender. The bearded, dirt-covered suspect quietly complies, and then gives his name as Eric Rudolph. Postell is stunned. The Olympic Park bomber, one of the FBI's most wanted domestic terrorists, has been found by a local cop behind a Save-A-Lot supermarket. Within hours, Rudolph is in federal custody, and authorities breathe a sign of relief. His survivalist run is over. Investigators later learned Rudolph has been camping in the woods nearby, surviving off wild plants and small game hunting, pilfering garbage bins, and even stealing from gardens to stay alive. He had lost a considerable amount of weight, but was otherwise in surprisingly good health. The community of Murphy, which had mixed feelings about the fugitive in their midst, is thrust into the spotlight as the nation learns Rudolph was literally hiding in his own hometown.
Wowzer. So once in custody, Rudolph is moved through a secure federal circuit. In 2003, he pleads not guilty at initial hearings, and prosecutors from Alabama and Georgia coordinate to try him for capital offenses that could bring the death penalty. The evidence against him is overwhelming, from DNA on the Army of God letters to eyewitness accounts and his own admission during a post arrest interview. Yet, in a surprising turn, Eric Rudolph decides to cut a deal. And on April 13th, 2005, just weeks before his first trial is set to begin, Rudolph appears in court and pleads guilty to all 4 bombings. He's 38 years old. In exchange for his guilty pleas and his cooperation, the Department of Justice agrees not to seek the death penalty. Instead, Rudolph will receive multiple life sentences with no possibility of parole. And as part of the plea agreement, he also reveals the location of over, you ready? 250 pounds of dynamite he had buried in the North Carolina mountains during his years on the run. Whoa. FBI and ATF teams later recover those explosives, catches that Rudolph had apparently stored for future attacks. Cache, sorry about that. Or to defend himself if cornered. My gosh, he was going to use that to defend himself, Joseph. Take it away.
In his courtroom allocution and written statement, Rudolph remains brazen and unrepentant. He coolly admits to the bombings, but frames them as acts of war. Quote, "Because I believe that abortion is murder, I also believe that force is justified. In the eyes of God, the violence I committed was morally justified." End quote. He writes in a rambling manifesto released after his plea. He explains that his goal in the Olympic Park bombing was to, quote, "to confound, anger, and embarrass the Washington government," end quote, for allowing abortion on demand. Rudolph's statement is laced with biblical references and anti-government rhetoric. Quote, "I have nothing against government or law enforcement in general," he claimed. "It is solely because this government has legalized the murder of children that I have no allegiance to it." In open court, victims and their families give emotional statements, while Rudolph shows little emotion. Notably, when asked directly by the judge if he planted the bomb that killed Officer Sanderson at the Birmingham clinic, Rudolph replied, quote, "I certainly did, Your Honor," end quote, with a casual shrug. At one point, he even winked at federal prosecutors, a chilling display of arrogance from a man responsible for 2 deaths and over 120 injuries. Many of Rudolph's victims expressed disappointment that he had escaped the death penalty. Emily Lyons, who was blinded in the Birmingham attack, told reporters she felt, quote, "the punishment should fit the crime," and that life in prison was too lenient for Rudolph's acts of terror. However, authorities note that the plea deal brought certainty of punishment and forced Rudolph to divulge his hidden explosives, potentially preventing future bloodshed.
Yes. Okay. So in July of 2005, Eric Rudolph is formally sentenced in back-to-back hearings in Birmingham and Atlanta. He receives 4 consecutive life terms plus an additional 120 years in federal prison. Effectively, Joseph, it's ensuring he will die behind bars. The judge's words underscore the gravity of Rudolph's crimes, calling him a cowardly terrorist who inflicted pain on innocent people to advance a warped ideology. And after sentencing, Rudolph is flown to the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, America's most secure penitentiary, where he joins the ranks of other notorious terrorists and killers. And now, in his late 50s, Rudolph spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. His reign of terror, which began with an Olympic celebration, turning to carnage, is now over. The Rudolph case stands as a stark example of homegrown domestic terrorism, motivated not by foreign ideology, but by a toxic mix of religious extremism and bigotry. And it also left a complicated legacy. It taught law enforcement hard lessons about investigative tunnel vision, as seen with Richard Jewell, and showcased both the strengths and the limits of massive manhunts. And for the victims and their families, Rudolph's life in a concrete cell offers some justice, though the scars he left physically and emotionally will never fully heal, injuring 120 people. Just think of that. Awful. No empathy. So Rudolph, he justifies his bombing as an act of faith to stop abortion and immorality. So, my question to you guys is, do you view him as a true believer driven to extremes, or is he simply a terrorist twisting religion to excuse violence? Who wants to take that?
I mean, I think giving credit to these other things is fine, but this man was a narcissistic psychopath. He had absolutely no empathy. None. Zero. And I think that when you come down to these kind of crimes, this kind of, ability to live off the grid, all of that, it's because they're narcissists and they're only out to save themselves. And, they can put their reasoning behind why they did these things and be a white supremacist, be an anti-abortionist, all of those things. It still comes down to they are right. And in this situation, because he got away with what he did, he then took it even further. And I think that is why there was the subsequent crimes and why he was able to stay off the grid for so long. So that's my take on it.
I agree with Shauna 100%. I think that this is obviously someone who was psychologically and emotionally unstable, also someone who really likes attention, thought he was more important than he actually was. That's a theme we see with a lot of people who commit horrendous crimes, whether it's terrorism or serial killers or cult leaders. It's a common thread. They think that they're more important or special than they actually are. And as far as his faith and being a believer, I mean, honestly, I don't even know what being a true believer means. I think that's subjective. But no, I think he's the exact opposite. People who are truly devout and pure in their faith would never go out and murder a bunch of people. And they would never rationalize anyone else going out and murdering other people using their belief. So, yeah, I think he's just a crazy person.
What was going on with some of the anti abortion and anti government extremists? If any of you remember, Sean, if you remember, where they were first hailing him as a hero for his attacks? What do you recall of that?
To be honest with you, back then, I don't remember any of that.
I obviously don't remember a lot of that because I was so young, but I think that's insane. I think honestly, anyone who's hailing Rudolph as a hero then or now belongs right at the top of a no-fly list. Like that is insane. We have free speech in America. People can voice their opinions. They can voice their displeasure with the government, but endorsing and hailing Rudolph as a hero for me, no, that's too far, and that's crazy to me.
He was against abortion. He was against gay people. I think that he also, correct me if I'm wrong here, a white supremacist. So he thought that he could fix everything by killing more people. So if you are against abortion, you think that you are killing a human being because you commit abortion, then why do you want to kill another human being so you can protest? It makes me very confused. The religion makes people kill. Like we kill in the name of religion. That is so like confusing to me. Unfortunately, he lost his father when he was a little boy, and his mom moved to North Carolina and got him into this cult that twisted his mind even more. So he got what he deserved, and I hope he stays in jail for the rest of his life, thinking about what he did in solitary confinement. So yeah, there we go.
So, Mariana, I agree with everything you're saying. And I remember that it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But were you in Atlanta at that time, Mariana?
Yes.
Were people scared? Like, what was going on?
Well, definitely scared and confused and also disappointed, right? It was the Olympics. It was a time where people are celebrating, a time where the city is hosting a big event and there's thousands of people in the city of Atlanta, and an event like that definitely makes the city look bad, in my opinion. So it was a lot of devastation and confusion, disappointment, grieving for the human being that was lost in a moment of celebration.
Thank you, Mariana. Let's hear from Shaw.
So some of you know I was an Olympic athlete and I was in the Barcelona games. I had completed law school and had started as a DA when this happened and was in Atlanta as a commentator for Canada, Team Canada, when this happened. My views on, the bombing are a little different than Mariana's because I was in the Olympic Village. I was surrounded by athletes from countries all over the world and had a different viewpoint in that, the games must go on kind of a thing. Like we had no choice. We had to mic up. We had to be ready to go. I don't want to focus too much on the Olympic side of things because this was, so many other things too. But I can tell you that the fear amongst the athletes and people that are part of the Olympics, not the Olympic Committee and not all the sponsorships and all that. I'm talking about the people that are there with the teams, with the countries. It was scary. And part of me wanted to get back on a plane, say fuck you to Team Canada and say to hell with it into my sport. But I had committed and I had gotten the time off from work because I had also just transitioned to become a US citizen that summer. So yeah, it was definitely a scary time. We didn't know if there was going to be more bombings. We didn't know if there was going to be more attacks. We didn't know if there were other bombs elsewhere. Security because of that has tightened at several Olympics around the athletes and the media and stuff since. When I was in the Olympics, we could go wherever we wanted. Well, our teams had curfews. That didn't mean I did. And even though I was in a foreign country and didn't speak the language, there was no worries. I think what this did was change the course of the Olympics because of how athletes were so scared. So with that, I land. And it's nice to see all of you.
Oh my God, it's so nice to hear you. If you're not familiar with the Olympics, the only other terrorist would have been Munich massacre, right, in 1972 in West Germany. A Palestinian terrorist group took Israeli athletes hostage.
That was, yeah, yes.
It's horrible and everything. But then I think, my God, this is horrible for the United States. Like this is so much bigger. And yes, the other crimes were horrible. But if I remember correctly, it was like the first time thinking, oh my God, maybe we're not safe at events. So after the bombings, I mean, I would think that the first thought would be this has to be an international terrorist attack. Like it has to be. It can't be something homegrown. And then to find that he was a domestic extremist, that would have changed public perception of security threats in the US.
So what I remember, it was never thought to be international. It was thought to be a lone incident and it was an American. That's what I remember. And the way they treated us and told us what to do was not considered as an international terrorist situation.
I agree with what Shannon say, especially because of the witness, right? Remember the security guard who body him right away, and he actually saved a lot of people from getting hurt because as they were moving people away, that's when the bomb exploded, right? It was definitely local and somebody from here. And you say something very crucial in the beginning, Adrienne, is domestic grown terrorism. These people are from the inside. This is the real insiders who are terrorizing people in our communities. And kudos to the guard who saw him right away. Because of him, eventually he was finally arrested and brought to justice.
So just to remind everyone, the security guard that was involved in the Centennial Olympic Park bombing, his name was Richard Jewell. He discovered the suspicious package. He began evacuating the area before the pipe bomb detonated. He was initially hailed as a hero. and then wrongly suspected by the FBI and media. My God, can you imagine if it was like on Facebook and social media now, how the keyboard warriors would go crazy? Joseph, let's go back to you and Richard Jewell. Do you remember that?
Yeah, so I learned about this like after the fact because I think I was probably like 7 when this happened, so I don't remember it actually taking place or being on the news. But in the years since, yeah, I watched the movie Richard Jewell and have learned about it through stuff like that. And I just want to say, poor Richard Jewell. Like, that's a pure person. Richard Jewell was just a nice guy who wanted to help everyone. He was a security guard. He had aspirations of being in law enforcement. That was his dream. He couldn't quite get there, but he took his job as a security guard very seriously. And he almost single handedly saved so many lives that night. And for whatever reason, the FBI and some of these journalists just set their sights on him and just, they did not want to let it go. They wanted to believe that he was the person responsible for this. And it just turned out that that was not the case.
That is crazy to me. And I just want to bring up something right now, just so we're all on the same page. Today is September 4th, 2025. And authorities have not yet caught Travis Decker, the Washington state father accused of murdering his 3 young daughters. And there's a multi-agency manhunt for Decker, which to me would look completely different in 2025 than 1996. But I'm like thinking survival, right? Like, how did he evade? Because was it almost 5 years?
Yeah, which is astounding. And he wound up being right in the woods of his own hometown. Like, that is so crazy to me. Like, the most obvious spot. And the first thing that struck me was, why didn't he leave the country? You managed to evade detection for 5 years. Why didn't you at some point get on a boat and get out of the country? It's like if you stayed in those woods, you're obviously going to eventually get caught.
I think you're putting your thoughts of what goes on now in the 2020s versus the 90s. They were hiding. They weren't escaping to different countries unless they had the means, unless they were really wealthy and even crazier than this guy. They all hid out in plain sight. And while this guy didn't completely hide out in plain sight, he was able to live off the grid because people didn't have the social media like Adrienne brought up. You didn't know what he looked like. You didn't know what to think. So, if this was now, of course they'd be, running for the border and there'd be people at the borders. I just think that back then he knew the land, he knew his town, he knew how to hide and change his appearance. And I think unfortunately what happened to the security guard also took the heat off of him for a while. And that by the time it sort of circled back around to him and they came to the conclusion it was him, people had forgotten who he was in his town because he'd sort of gone missing.
No, Sean, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. In the 90s, it definitely was different. You're right. So that did seem to be a bit of a theme around
You
this.
weren't born.
I was alive in the 90s. I was very young, but I was alive.
Yes, I agree with Shauna when it comes to, yeah, there was no social media as much as it is now. But the other thing that was very interesting to me is to remember that he made a 911 call, right? So I feel like deep down, he wanted to be caught. He was looking for validation of, I did this. I did this. You know what I mean? And so even though the bomb went off after he made the phone call, remember, he called twice, 911, anonymous, but it was him. And so it was not anonymous because it was actually him behind the scenes. So he wanted to be caught. He played not guilty in the beginning, but then he didn't resist. This is what's very crucial and very typical. It always happens. When they get arrested and they are guilty, they don't resist. They surrender. And he did exactly that. He surrendered when he got caught. He played not guilty in the beginning, and then he made a deal and played guilty because the evidence was like too obvious and too many. But deep down, he wanted to be caught because he wanted to be glorified by what he did.
I mean, think of all the terrorism that happened on 9/11 here, right before, 2 years before that. I think that possibly him being caught was because they shifted their resources too. We had the deadliest attack on American soil ever. I think that some of his ability to go undetected is unfortunately because of what happened to this country on September 11th, 2001. I mean, the lockdown, the travel restrictions, just there were so many things that happened because of that. And so many people on guard that I think he just sort of was in this small mountainous region, town area that nobody thought about him. I don't know.
Just interesting to me how you can disappear um, for that many years and live off the grid because, I need pancakes. Though I probably can make that on a fire in a stove. So, Joseph, what other burning questions do you want to ask our wonderful audience?
So, something that stuck out to me was he repeatedly planted secondary bombs intended to kill first responders. That to me is a whole nother layer of premeditation and just evil. It's like he didn't just want to kill people, he wanted to kill the people that were going to help the people he was trying to kill. That is really crazy to me and speaks to a very warped psychology. What does everyone think about that layer of it?
Joseph. Was it his brother that cut off his own arm? His brother or his cousin?
It was his brother that cut off his own hand and then sent a video of it. Like, insane.
That tells you so much about their childhood. Like how warped, how abusive, how manipulative their environment must have been. I mean, you really have to be over the edge, right? And then his brother to like, oh, well, I'm going to now, make a video, saw off my hand and send it out. Like, that is how terrible their home environment was, right? I don't have the facts on that, but that just for me says so much about their environment, right? Probably verbally abusive, just told like they were nothing, like all these things. And the whole religious thing, it happens still today, is that people want to do harm because their quote unquote belief, right? And they believe in Christ and they're so religious and they're so pure, blah, blah, blah. It's just an excuse, right? Of them to justify why they're doing X, Y, and Z. But it's really their brain is just something happened to them. That's what I really believe. I don't think they're born this way. It's what they were taught, what they heard. But it's really sad. These stories, I think they're sad because of what really happened in their childhood for them to be that way or in the home that they grew up in. Sad.
So, he is currently serving multiple life sentences. The family, I know that they really wanted the death penalty. Are they two of the same? Are they completely different? Or is there something mentally that would like really be tough to know that you're eventually going to be put to death? I need a little more help understanding that.
Yeah. So I think it depends on how you look at it. I think it depends on the person. Some people would say that life in prison is worse than the death penalty, and some would not say that. I think that life in prison versus the death penalty, in my view, comes down to how much damage they can or cannot do. Because even if you're in solitary confinement, even if you have life in prison, there are still ways to cause chaos and violence and drama and influence other people who are outside of the prison that can act on your behalf. That to me, and I won't go off on a tangent, but the whole death penalty argument, for me, that is a situation where I am for the death penalty. When you have an individual who will absolutely, if given the opportunity, continue to cause chaos and violence and problems for people from still inside the walls of the prison. So that's a scenario where I think the death penalty should be on the table because that really would completely eliminate the possibility that that person can continue to pull the strings for other people from behind the prison walls.
Any last minute thoughts from the audience? Everyone's been so lovely. It's been fantastic having Shauna here. Do you have anything else that you want to say?
Oh, I just want to say shout out to Richard Jewell. So sorry you got accused of being the bomber. You were the hero of it. And shout out to law enforcement who spent several years trying to track this guy down, specifically the FBI agents. They were hiking through those woods and those mountains. And at any point, there could have been an explosive device that he could have left or a trap. I mean, that was a constant thing on those agents' minds during this time as they were looking for him. Because I've listened to people in interviews who were on those task forces looking for him, that it was a real possibility that you could step on a landmine as you were trying to find him. So shout out to them. And I'm glad that they finally caught him. And yeah, this is just, it's a crazy case. I will never understand the full psychology behind people who do stuff like this. I think it has to do with just a very, very sick mind that then tries to rationalize their horrific behavior with things like religion.
So true. And hopefully we've learned lessons, we've come far. And I would like to just say to our law enforcement, to the family, thank you too, because I can't imagine knowing that your husband, son, brother, friend is having to do that kind of search and seize. It's just crazy. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
All right, that is a wrap for Debate the News True Crime. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth look at the Eric Rudolph case. We know it was a lot of information, but cases like this, involving domestic terrorism, extremist ideology, and a years-long quest for justice, are important to fully understand.
And if you enjoyed this episode or learned something new or have information you want to give us, we would love that. Please subscribe to Debate the News True Crime on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a review. We really do want your feedback. It really helps others to find the show. And Joseph and I have been committed to this 2 shows a week since early March. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing, Adrian. And it's amazing that we have a great group of people that consistently keeps showing up and want to be a part of the show and want to listen to it. And that's what makes this so special and unique and fun. So, as always, thank you for listening. We'll be back on Tuesday with another case and another conversation.
And until next time, stay safe, stay curious. And Joseph, I have to add this. Please, my friends, fellow listeners, don't cut off your hand for anyone. And if I ask you for a hand, I probably really want the whole arm. Oh, I said it. Okay. Have a great night, everyone.
Exactly, Adrian. Don't cut off your hand. Don't make a bomb. Maybe like get a hobby, get some therapy, consult a psychiatrist, channel that energy into something not so destructive. Good night, everyone.